Thank you for joining us on the Winning at Selling podcast. I'm Bill Hellkamp of Reach Development Systems, and with me is Professor Scott Plum of the Minnesota Sales Institute.
What goes into the process of making decisions? How do people decide? Often it is the criteria, the context, and the contrast. Do you know the process your prospect goes through in making decisions? Join Bill and I as we discuss the decision-making process and other great ideas on episode 469 of Winning at Selling podcast.
Start with our book club again this week. We are in
There's a lot there.
Yeah, and we're in the last stages of Let's Get Real or Let's Not Play. And we're on chapter 6, Winning, the Art of Enabling Decisions. So isn't that interesting that we're talking about decisions?
Really lucked out.
That's right. This is part 2, pages 144 through 169. As you said, Scott, there's a ton there.
Yeah. Great stuff.
I'm going to start off by just kind of talking about where we are in this process again, because he talked about the order model. And I think that's important. And the ORD and the order model are opportunity. Is there enough of an opportunity, a match for us to continue? Resources. Is the prospect willing to commit resources, time, money, talent to make this successful? And D for decisions. What's the decision-making process and how are we going to get them to an important solution? So once all of that takes place, we can present our exact solution. And that's part of the art of enabling decisions is during that presentation. So we already talked about don't present until you're ready to present, which I thought was good.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were going through the steps of the meeting. So we got to step 5, which is yellow lights. He likes the yellow lights.
Mm-hmm.
Now for us to give a common language, yellow lights are a version of objections, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. They're potential objection that needs to be dealt with. And the best way to handle objections is before they come up.
That's right. I agree with that 100%. So he said that to turn the yellow lights to green lights, and this is the non-price. So he had a section on non-price objections and another section on price objections, which I thought was interesting. He said the good consultants that can do that can check their ego at the door. And an example he said was you have to stay focused on the client, not on your own desires.
True. Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, I love that. I mean, moving off your ego is the main thing is, check your ego at the door. And again, we have to be able to become emotionally detached as we get into the conversation with the prospect. And we need to focus on them and what they want. And sometimes, when we're working with prospects, they become emotional. They might even become frustrated. They might share the frustration. We can't take that personally, and we can't bow down and just give up and go, I don't want to upset anybody. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. No, you got to keep going.
Or sometimes they can bring up an issue that is like way out of left field. And you've got to stay focused on what the real client issues were. Sometimes, and you've been in this with a group selling situation, somebody brings in something that nobody thought was important.
Wow, yeah.
And so you got to stay focused on what the conversation was about.
It's a distraction and it's deflection.
Yeah.
And if they do that, you're getting close. You know that you're weaning it down to the issues that really matter. And if they're starting to deflect and distract, then you're getting closer. So look at that as a positive.
They're trying to set up the negotiation at that point.
Right. Yeah.
Now, the number 2 thing that he said a good consultant has to be able to be is willing to be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And by that, he meant that the solution isn't good enough or the relationship isn't good enough, and we got to walk away from it. Don't be so good at changing every yellow to green that you win a lousy deal. A friend of mine once said, if you're not willing to walk away from a negotiation, you won't ever win it.
Right.
If the deal is bad, can you walk away from it, or do you insist on going for it because I need the commission check?
Then you start working with misfits. And I like to use the example, when you go out deer hunting, how many pheasants do you bring home? None. You're out deer hunting.
That's right.
I'm shooting deer, not bringing home pheasants.
I talk to my students all the time, and that is, you get a client that's wrong for you, you've just bought yourself a pain in the rear.
Right.
Nothing's going to be right. If they don't value what you value, you got the wrong group and they're never going to be happy with what you do.
You're going to be frustrated. They're going to be frustrated. There's the value's not going to be there. It's going to be a distraction. It's going to be a waste of, energy. And is the money really worth it?
Implementation is going to come to you all the time and go, "What the heck did you do to us, man?"
And then the reputation after that. Yep. How do you get a testimonial or recommendation out of that? You really don't.
We hate each other.
Right.
It's been going very well.
Well, who decided to work together? Well, I guess we both decided it. Okay.
All right. So he had some tools to turn the yellow lights to green, or as we would call them, ways to overcome objections, right?
Mm-hmm.
So never do something for nothing. I love this one. Get value back from their requests. I used to sell at a stereo store, and I was in there by myself, as I was quite often. It was a small mall situation. And guy came in, he said, "Hey man, how does this speaker sound with this stereo?" And I kept moving stuff around and did all this work for him. And at the end, he goes, "Thanks, man."
Mm-hmm.
He left, and all my stereo systems were messed up, and it took me 2 hours to get them back.
God.
And if I had just asked the question, "If you like the way it sounds, are you willing to buy?"
Yeah.
He would have said, "No, I'm just looking." And then I could have said, "Well, you know what? The speakers are going to sound about the same with every system that they're with." Right. So I wouldn't have moved everything around. So never do something for nothing.
Yeah, it's a great point. I did some work for a company that sold auto parts, and the reps would be working the desk, and they'd get a phone call, and a mechanic would say, "Do you have this in?" And they go, "Let me check." And they'd run in the back, and then they'd spend about 5 minutes to come back. Go, "Yeah, we got it." They go, "Okay, how much is it?" And they give them the price, and they go, "Okay, I'll call you back if we need it." And all of a sudden, they spend 5 minutes looking for it, and they never call back. And I say, "Okay, here's what we need to do is, do you have this part?" I go, "We might. Suppose we have it. What would you like to order it?" "Well, I guess if you have it, how much is it?" "It's this price. Do you want to order it?" "Oh, okay. I guess we should probably order it. I'm not going to go looking for it unless you're going to buy it."
That's right.
And all they're doing is they're just shopping on price. And if they know that there's going to be scarcity and there's a limitation of the supply, you want to be able to close on that interest while it's still interest,
right,
and be able to get them to commit. So,
right. And just a verbal commitment for people. "Well, yeah, I'll buy it if you have it in stock."
Right.
"Okay, good. Then I'll go look for it." And it's, "Well, we'll think." "No, you said you were going to buy it, man."
Yeah.
So you just hold them accountable. All right. The second step was to acknowledge, understand, and resolve. This felt a little bit to me like feel, felt, found.
Me
But
too.
it was better. Understand the real issue, understand the client's criteria, understand what happens if we do or do not resolve the yellow. And then a bunch of suggestions for resolving using facts and data, third-party stories, logic, analogies, and reframing perceptions.
I think one of the key skills that we have to apply here is active listening. When we're really working on understanding, we really need to be listening to everything that is being said and also what is not being said. So what are they not sharing with you that's relevant, that they're not aware of? What are they holding back from telling you? And when you've gone through this multiple times, you know what information is relevant and what needs to be considered when they make a decision.
Yeah. And not only that, but to get more details, I've seen a lot of salespeople answer the wrong question or answer the wrong issue. And this understanding is important. Tell me more. Why is that important? Why is that something that's crucial to you? If we can find a solution to that, are you ready to move ahead? Right. Which is don't do something for nothing.
Yeah.
And so ask those questions to get very good clarity before you start answering the question wrong. I think you used an example last week of, are you a big company? "Oh yeah, we're really big." "Oh, well, I wanted a small company."
Right.
So make sure you're answering the right question or the question properly before you, and you do that through asking the right questions of them to get clarity. Now, the next step was turning yellow lights to green in price. And I knew you'd like this part because we have reasons for pricing issues.
Right.
Always. So why do we get pricing issues? And Scott, I'm going to let you run this because I know these are your favorites.
Yeah. I think, the first one is not establishing value up front. We don't know what's most important to them. Value is defined by the customer and the prospect, and we need to be able to find out what is most important to them, what is the cost and consequences of inaction, because we compete with that all the time, and what are they trying to gain from making a decision, and really focusing on the outcome. As Bill has talked about, people don't want to buy a drill, they want a hole, and we want to be able to focus on the outcome. Knowing that their pricing is flexible, is kind of a good and bad. I think, you need to be able to be firm in your pricing, but if you are going to adjust your price, like we talked about earlier, don't do something for nothing. So what are you going to trade? And look at what are you going to trade in order to discount the price.
I think also what they mean by knowing that their price is flexible is that salespeople go in and let them know the price is flexible.
Mm-hmm.
That they start the negotiation with that old, well, it's $100,000, but we can work on that price if that's too much for you. It's like, well, it isn't $100,000 anymore.
Right, exactly. You just lost your position and the precedent that you're going to be able to set. You have to set a precedent with pricing.
Yep.
Number 3, believing that all price challenges are real. and prospects are going to be a little defensive. And I've kind of used this in a way of, well, what do you want to stay under? Well, we want to stay under 25,000. I said, okay, so if in our conversation, our discussion, I see something that might be over 25,000, I'm going to hesitate to share that with you. Question. And they go, What? You're going to hold something back? Well, yeah, because you want to stay under 20. Well, if we found something that we liked, we might be able to find the money. Oh, okay. So 25,000 is not the ceiling.
That's right. But you don't beat them up on it once they've capitulated, right? You let it go and you just put that in the back of your mind, and now we have it. But I'll tell you what, I complain about price every time I buy something.
Right.
That's what I do, man.
Yeah.
This ought to be cheaper.
It's the flinch. It's the negotiation technique of the flinch. Jeez, I wasn't expecting it to be that high.
Oh my gosh.
And how do we counter that? Folks, how do we counter it when Bill flinches? We say, yeah, it is expensive. And there's no reaction then. It's like, oh, okay, well, that flinch just went to waste because it didn't get a response out of the salesperson.
The goal you're hoping for from the flinch is, well, what price do you need it to be? Yeah. $3. That's what I need it to be. So, all right. What's the last one?
Is disliking the price discussion, period. Yeah. And this is our childhood belief that we were raised with. There's really 3 types of beliefs when it comes to money. Money is scarce. Money is plentiful, or most importantly, it's not polite to talk about money. Yeah, this is the belief.
Money, religion, or politics, right?
Yeah, we don't bring it up. And guess what? Anything that we don't bring it up, we're going to have to deal with it later. And it's going to be a lot tougher because it's outside of our normal process. If we follow a process, we end up avoiding the objections later in the conversation.
Yeah, I think it's just that natural reaction that we don't want to talk about difficult things. And the price discussion is difficult. And you know why it's often difficult for salespeople? Because they don't know their own value.
Right.
And they don't know what the competition's charging, and they don't know enough about the marketplace to know whether they're bringing real value into the discussion. So be careful of that. So he gave a framework for price negotiation on page 160, and he called it work for art, aggressive, realistic target, as if there were no D or no deal. Mm-hmm. So either you get your target or we're not going to make the deal here. So you have to know that there's a minimum allowable target that you're going to go to. Otherwise, you're going to have to walk.
Right. And that's tough for us to do sometimes as salespeople. And we have to be cautious about that because it's going to show. And if it shows and we come across as being desperate, they're going to have us on the run. And, we need to be firm in our offering, and we need to be able to take deals that we want and be prepared to walk away from ones that we don't.
And they can hear in your voice if you have resolve over that price or if you're already wishy-washy on it.
Mm-hmm.
So number 2, only negotiate price if it is the last issue. So don't start talking about price if there's other issues still on the table.
Right. I always say if we've decided to work together, now we can decide how we're going to charge and what the price is going to be.
That's right.
But they have to decide to work with you. If they haven't decided to work with you, it may be premature. Now, I know that's not always the case, and I know it's tough to always do, but just think about that philosophy when you're working with somebody. And we're bringing up price once they commit to work with you, and you're it. Now you can come upon, how you're going to charge and how you're going to price things.
Right. Excellent. All right. Offer options, not ultimatums. And I love to have options. I love to have other criteria that I can work with, such as terms, delivery dates, who holds things in the warehouse,
right?
How often, how quick we can turn their inventory. All those different things are options. And I like to have 4 or 5 of those things in my back pocket. So when they start talking about price, I can say, Larry, we can't move on the price, but let's see if there's a couple of other things that can increase the value for you to help you feel more comfortable with this thing. Because sometimes people need something to show that they negotiated. I won this thing, and so we were able to hold price.
And they need to feel like they're in charge too. And when they pick, they're going to buy for their reasons. Okay. Well, and in a negotiation, this is called a MISO, multiple, equivalent, simultaneous offer. You need at least 3. And within the 3, you don't care which one they pick. You really don't, because the profitability is pretty much the same in all 3 of them. You just want them to pick one, and you want them to pick the one that they see the most value in.
Number 4 is the option should keep you whole, meaning you don't give up your price. You don't lose money on the deal. Your option isn't so expensive that it's ruining the value of the offer. It's just changing the things a little bit. Number 5 is on concessions. If you offer concessions, A, concede slowly, B, concede small, and C, never give something for nothing. And then the number 6 is keep the dialogue open. Don't be, and that's kind of the ultimatum thing, right? You take this price, or it's my way or the highway. Scott's advice is really well thought out, and that is they want to feel as if they're in control. That's why the options are necessary, and don't put your foot down on the table and say, this is the only way we're going to do this. You got to keep the dialogue open. You may eventually have to concede some on price, but that's something that you're going to have to make the decision on.
And dealing with silence is probably the toughest negotiation technique when we get to this point. If the prospect is silent and they're not responding and you don't know where you are, and that's a whole nother session for Bill and I to go into, but we recognize that that's a tough one to deal with.
So one of the things they talked about too was pricing tactics, or tactics used during a price negotiation. Now, Scott doesn't believe you should know these salespeople,
Right,
so
that's not true.
Close your ears, because these tactics happen. But here's some of the things they'll say, or they'll allude to. Number 1, win this, and there's more to come. Meaning, if you drop your price, you can lose money forever.
True.
So I don't know that there's more to come, but I've heard that one before. Oh, if you do this deal with us, we've got lots to come. It's like, well, if I give you it away, what good does that do? Right?
Exactly.
The second one, this is a test project just to see how we'll do together. So they're trying to imply that we're taking a chance on you, and if you do well and give us cheap enough, we'll go with you. Number 3, you can use us as a reference because we are big and important. And so you better give us a discount because we're big and important. But if you're so big and important, why do you need a discount?
Right.
And then number 4, all of our vendors are giving us a 10% discount.
Sometimes that's part of that Six Sigma. When you get into that Six Sigma deal, it's our vendors, our lenders, and we get a discount, and we don't pay for 120 days.
Yeah.
So
take it or
I love
leave
the
120 day thing. Yeah. You can wait forever because we don't value you at all as a partner.
Right. We're going to make sure you go broke, but we're going to be making more of a profit.
That's right. Well, listen, I don't want to, this is a long chapter.
It is.
He goes into the next step in agenda. That's the final piece. Here's the 3 results you can look for. Let's do it. No, thank you. Or we're going to wait on the decision. And I think the wait on the decision is the most painful one.
Yeah. A great chapter. I mean, really packed with a lot of great information. It's something that I think salespeople need to go through more than once.
Yeah.
And it's going to take a while to internalize it. But most importantly, that's the goal, is to internalize that. And once you internalize it, you walk out of these appointments going, wow, that went really well.
You're in charge more with this process than you are if you're just going in and having a chit chat.
Right.
We want to announce our next book, and we're going to go back to more of a personal development book, go away from the sales process. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. If you haven't read that, if you have read it, time to go back to it and read it again. It's one of the key, I think, personal development books in the world.
And we're going to be doing the first edition, right? I mean,
we're not doing the newest edition.
We're the historians. Yeah,
that's right. Well, we already own the old book, so we're not going to buy the new
exactly.
one. Is that what historian means?
Yeah, we're going to be a faithful historian, and we're going to go back and go with the first one,
the one we own. This segment has been brought to you by the Jumpstart Sales Coaching Program, presented by the hosts of the Winning at Selling podcast.
Every professional athlete has a coach, someone to assist and advise. Tiger Woods had 4 swing coaches so that he could stay at the top of his game. What would you like to improve or overcome in the next year? Perhaps as a salesperson, you want to be more productive with your prospecting, overcoming objections, or delivering more effective presentations. As a sales manager, you want to create a spark within your sales team with a new message, a refreshed approach to starting new conversations with prospects, or you are looking for market-ready strategies to increase revenue and shorten the sales cycle with your existing team. Or as a business leader, you want to transform the sales culture and your value proposition for the new marketplace. Whatever your reason, this is the perfect time to engage with an experienced sales coach. That is why your hosts of Winning at Selling podcast, Professor Scott Plum and Bill Hellkamp, have developed the Jumpstart Sales Coaching Program. Now you can receive personal coaching from the same sales professionals you enjoy on this podcast. It all starts with a discussion to give us insights into your specific goals, challenges, needs, and motivation. Go to winningatselling.com to contact Bill or Scott about the Jumpstart Sales Coaching Program. Do you believe you deserve better results? Now is the time to invest in yourself, your people, and your customers, and invest in your future. So our topic today is on the decision-making process, and a little bit of a repeat. We're not going to go into all of the specifics that we talked about earlier.
Yep.
But I like Bill started off with the chapter. I mean, we need to know where we are in the decision-making process. So I always, call this the map of the mall. Where are we?
Right.
And we're at the point where we've uncovered reasons to work together. And now we may be getting into the different people that are involved, because everybody's going to buy for different reasons. We're going to go into kind of a cast of characters and to talk about why people would want to buy from us and look at what criteria they're looking at. I think this book really brings out the importance of criteria and knowing what each person is going to decide on when it comes to the criteria.
This is the kind of information that clients will never volunteer. You
No, they
have
won't.
to go and ask these questions, and they're not going to say, oh, by the way, I really don't have the authority to make this decision. I'm just checking this out for you. And when it comes to decision, I'm going to take this all back to Larry and he's going to figure it all out. But I'm not going to tell you that.
Right.
You're going to have to ask that and ask it a couple of times till you find out, well, it's not just Larry, it's Larry and this other committee, and it's three people. And then you got these influencers and they want to know about it. And you got to find it out.
Yeah. So I'll give you one question. And just like we go through decision-making process, we need to ask a question so that everybody knows where we are. And here's the question. When your company decides to make a purchase like this one, could you share with me the process that you followed?
Right.
And most likely, you want to know this earlier than later, because once you deliver that proposal and you don't know the decision-making process, you've given them all the information they need and you're waiting. They have you on the run, and it's painful.
Well, not only that, but when you're trying to find out things, the further you are away from that moment, the more likely you are to find it out.
Mm-hmm.
Once they're thinking about, oh boy, I need to make this decision, they're less likely to tell you how it's made than if it's real early in the process and you ask a quality question like this one. Take a moment to share with me your process. Much more likely to give you that information because we're not at the process time. It's like asking, negotiating things in the middle of negotiation. They're not going to tell you the truth then. I'm going to talk about budget in the middle of the negotiation. It's too late. You need to find that out real early. So I think these are, as you said, are very early questions in the process.
Mm-hmm. And we can shorten them up. I mean, another question is, last time your company made a decision like this, how did you go about it? And now you're finding out, or do you think it's going to be any different this time?
Mm-hmm.
Or in addition, will you be consulting others?
Yeah.
And I always find that when I ask the question early on, saying, I'm kind of curious, what other options are you considering? Or are you going to be consulting others when it comes to making this decision? They're a little bit guarded, but I say, it's okay if you don't want to tell me. I always ask, what other companies are you looking at when it comes to hiring a company like me? And they would say, wow, we're not really comfortable really sharing it. I said, that's okay. I've been around a long time and I know great companies and I know companies that are not so great. And I won't say anything bad about my competitors, but if you've got a good option, I'll tell you that's a good option.
Right.
And sometimes they can leverage my experience. And when you're being upfront with your prospect about what's best for them, they kind of look at that as you're being a resource.
Yeah. That trust has to be built though, doesn't it?
Right. It really does. So let's look at who's involved in the
Okay.
decision. And I'm going to give you just different types of characters. There are going to be different roles and obligations to each of those folks, but sometimes they all have an influence. The first is the initiator. I mean, have you ever worked with somebody that opens a transaction, maybe makes a call and says, we're looking for a quote. So they're initiating it. Sometimes it's the gatekeeper.
And how many people never get off talking to the initiator?
It's really a summer intern, folks, and they don't have any influence at all. By the way, they're going back to college next time you call them.
Yeah. Bobby's pretty good with the computer. Bobby, go online and get some quotes.
Yeah, you think you got one. The gatekeeper, those are the folks that kind of control the flow of information and access, and they can be really good. I mean, you got to really nurture them, be nice to them, always know their name, always know who you're calling and talking to. There can be a champion. This is a person that's willing to support your cause and aid in the access to the decision maker. Now, keep in mind, there may be champions for the other options too.
That's right.
Could be often your competitors. Yeah.
Especially if you're working with an incumbent.
Yeah. And we've talked about working with these folks before, Bill, right? I mean, they can kind of come across as being your friend, but in reality, they want to gather information so they can sabotage your proposal. So be cautious about that.
There's a lot of players.
Yeah. You can have influencers. These are non-buyers who affect the purchase from either inside or outside the company. So similar to a champion, but a little bit different because they're going to be having a direct impact on the person that's making the decision. I think, keep in mind, there's also another role, the user. Who's going to be using the equipment or who's going to be using the service or the software interface? And they're going to have some influence on what is working and what's not working. And if you get a chance to talk to them and you really pull a lot of information out of some of the things that are frustrating for them, if it gets to a product or a machine, you want to make sure that your solution and really leverage the strengths of your solution to make it easier for the user. And then obviously then we get to the decision maker, they make the decision. And sometimes there's also a ratifier. This is a person that approves the decision. And the decision maker could be somebody within the channel that's responsible for the ultimate outcome. And the ratifier could be the CEO, the person that is not involved in the decision, but goes with the influence that the people on the team have given him or her. And then they decide to go with that particular option.
Absolutely, Scott. All of these different positions have to be dealt with. And again, when you look at this list, you think, wow, that's a lot of work. Yeah, it's a lot of work. And you've got to figure out who all these people are in that process. And if you skip one, you may not get the deal.
So one thing to keep in mind is don't confuse organizational authority with buying authority. They may not be the same.
Right. Just because I have the title doesn't mean I care about this particular purchase.
Yeah. And then think about the question as you're going through the conversation with everybody. What happens if I don't have all the information before we continue and offer a proposal or a quote? So what's going to happen if you don't have all of this information? You deliver a quote and all of a sudden they go silent and you don't know where you are. Right. And you don't know who to talk
why.
to.
You don't know what you screwed up on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and that's what the Let's Get Real book has really emphasized is you have to really know what you're doing in order to put together that very best proposal.
Mm-hmm. So as we're really qualifying, we're asking questions, get 3 pain points for every problem area that they've talked about. And you really need to reiterate and reinforce the reasons on why they want to make a change and remind them about some of the things that they shared with you, because they may be a little worried or might be in a little shock about making a change, but we know that we've uncovered reasons why they want to make a change. And that why is the emotion that goes into making the decision.
And remember, even when they make a change, they're still going to feel a sense of loss. So you still have to overcome some, even if they hate what they're using right now, some people are going to be reluctant to make that change.
Right. So just some other things to keep in mind, that creating urgency is driven by an emotional commitment. So as you're talking with people and you're bringing up some of the emotional reasons to work together, that's going to create a sense of urgency. And a process is going to demonstrate your experience and knowledge. And you're going through a process of asking questions, getting information, being able to work with them on how they make a change. And that's demonstrating your knowledge and your experience. And lastly,
all of those conversations are building credibility. That's what you have to remember.
Right.
The more people you can talk to, the more you learn, but also the more credibility you create and the more friends you create.
Yeah. And just knowing the process demonstrates your experience and your knowledge. Sometimes it's not spewing all specs and knowledge about the product. And lastly, I'll add, establish a timeline and follow the commitment steps and leverage it to prevent the stalls along the way.
Yep.
Once you get to that point of, okay, here's a timeline that we need to follow and keep people on track. Otherwise, the outcome and the impact is going to be delayed. And most likely the prospects don't want to do that.
Now, I got one question for you, Scott, because I listened to your conversation with Anthony last week.
It's a great conversation.
I'm looking for the company pitch on here, where you give the company pitch to each of these people involved and show them how wonderful you are with your slides and your logos.
I think people are more interested in what you're going to do for them than how long you've been in business. I think a lot of information you can include in the proposal at the back. A lot of information that the prospect wants to know is maybe even on your website.
Maybe they don't give a rat's butt about how many offices you have around the world.
I know.
If they only operate in Minnesota or operate in Texas, they probably don't care that you have a London office.
Right.
Yeah.
As Anthony said, go out in the backyard, bury it or burn it, one or the other.
Burn it to the great gods of sales.
I've heard it before that if somebody is upside down in a ditch, they really don't care about the brand that the ambulance is. I want an ambulance. I want to get out of here.
That's right.
And I don't care what name is on the side of the ambulance. I'm in trouble. I need help. There's something that has to change. I'm talking with somebody that's going to be able to give me a better outcome than I have right now. I believe in them. I believe in the company, and I believe in the solution just through the conversation. And we don't need to be always selling our brand or how long we've been in business. And that's not always important. It adds credibility, but I think at this point, you're probably already maintained the confidence in you as a salesperson that a prospect is going to work with you.
All right. Great discussion on making a decision and helping the customer make a decision. I have a 2-minute selling tip video called A Confused Customer. Talks about sharing those value statements with your customer and which ones you should share.
This segment of Winning at Selling Podcast is brought to you by The Art of Prospecting, your guide to getting in the door, by Steve Kloida.
Steve Kloida was known internationally for increasing salespeople's ability to make solid appointments with qualified prospects. You too can learn this essential skill by ordering a copy of his superb book, The Art of Prospecting, your guide to getting in the door. In this book, Steve shares the top strategies and tactics he has developed, implemented, and personally tested with more than 1 million sales and prospecting calls. You can get his book on the website, theprospectingexpert.com. In addition, check out his other great online resources. Instant Sales Coaching, which will guide you through 5 online success modules. A guided prospecting process entitled Call Reluctance Transformer, and the Magnetic Selling Strategies Workbook, a detailed step-by-step guide to increasing your sales. Get any of these valuable resources at theprospectingexpert.com. We'll wrap up this week with our golden nugget, and this is from Chris Voss, who wrote Never Split the Difference. If you approach a negotiation thinking the other guy thinks like you, you're wrong. That's not empathy, that's projection.
Very good advice.
Oh, absolutely. Too many people think, and this happens in leadership, it happens in sales. This is how I feel, so everyone else must feel the same way.
Yeah, and he talks a little bit about tactical empathy. It's a very good technique. I read his book, great book, and I almost booked an event with him. I came really close, and we just weren't able to pull it off. But very popular guy, great knowledge, great experience. If you haven't heard from him about
excellent. Maybe we can get him on the podcast sometime.
Yeah.
Should try that. And we can talk about negotiation.
Right. I think really good stories.
Certain salespeople have to turn off their ears because they're not allowed to know about it.
That's right. So everything we talked about is at the website, winningatselling.com.
Next week, chapter 7 of Let's Get Real or Let's Not Play, Initiating New Opportunities, and the sales process, part 8, budget. Go out and get better, one skill at a time.
Joyful selling.